There are probably three ways that we can go through and view the currently mounted file systems. The most common way to do this would be with the use of the mount command itself. The mount command, without any options or arguments, will just display what's currently mounted. But we could also go through and read from the file /etc/mtab, so the mount table, and this is a read-only file that we never edit, but it then is a representation of what is mounted. Normally, though, if we want to see what's happening on our system, we want to look at it through the raw files, then we go through to the proc directory, and the /proc/mounts is the representation of our mounted file systems. So I'll say the most easy way is just using the mount command, but this is really reading information from the mtab or the proc mounts file. But as we look at these, depending on the system that we are using, we're likely to see a lot more file systems than we think we have. This is because we have both virtual file systems and real file systems. One of the virtual file systems that we might see on some newer systems, such as SUSE Enterprise Linux 11 Service Pack 2 or later, or we're going to see within our Red Hat 7 and our CentOS 7 systems, are control groups. Control groups become ways of being able to control through resource utilization the multiple processes that can be unified within a control group. So very often we're going to see control groups representing our services. Certainly we're going to see this on our CentOS 7 machine that we're using. We've also got the fuse or the file system in user space. So this then allows us to have a representation of our file system but have things running as non-privileged users. Also have the proc file system, which a lot of people will be used to, the procfs. So this then is showing us our runtime system and can be viewed through the /proc directory. But also SC Linux has its own virtual file system. So there are many file systems that are virtual, but of course we have real file systems such as the root file system. Remember when we were talking about mount points, that the mount points have to exist themselves on the root file system. The /boot directory is very often partitioned up separately, so that may well be represented by its own separate and of course real file system. So this is where we're going to find our kernel and our initialization RAM disk. Of course, on some systems people will partition up home separately as well, so we will have our home file system, maybe because we want to implement user quotas or something like that, and then quoting on the home directory is a good way to limit user space to their own individual home directories. The var directory for variable data may well be partitioned up separately as well, and here we can expect to find spool files, log files, mail files, databases, those sorts of things are generally going to exist within the var for variable directory structure. So of course it all depends how you've partitioned up your system. But of course we have control over our real file systems, we have less control over the virtual file systems as they're more set up and managed by the system itself. Now, of course, I think we've all been told about this since we're about knee-high to a grasshopper, but don't forget to flush, will you? What we really mean here is the use of the sync command. So generally, when we're writing through two file systems, we actually write through two memory buffers. These memory buffers then become dirty as they have content, but then after a period of time or a percentage of memory usage, these are going to be flushed through to the disk. However, we can force a flush or write to disk to happen by the use of the sync command. So we might use this when we're considering ejecting a USB drive. Although the eject command itself will most probably run the sync command, there's no harm in running it before we try to eject the device. So let's just take a look now at the command line so we can see a little bit of these files, the mtab, the proc mounts, and of course the use of the mount command, and then have a quick look at the use of the sync command.